This is VOA News. Via remote, I'm Diane Roberts. British officials said late Sunday that the queue for people to view Queen Elizabeth II lying in state had reached final capacity and had to be closed to new entrants. As more and more foreign dignitaries arrive in London ahead of the Queen's state funeral, many of them went to pay their respects to the late monarch. AP correspondent Karen Chamis reports.
President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden were among thousands of mourners to enter Westminster Hall, where the Queen's coffin lay in state. Biden made the sign of the cross and put his hand to his heart as he stood quietly by her casket. As he signed the Queen's Book of Condolences, the President told reporters how he felt about her as a person.
Decent, honorable, and all about service.
He even said she reminded him of his own mother.
She had that look like, are you okay? Anything I can do for you? What do you need? And then also, make sure you do what you're supposed to do.
Other dignitaries to sign the book were Israeli President Isaac Herzog.
Her reign was truly majestic.
Canadian President Justin Trudeau said he remembered her as a child.
Her presence throughout my life had been constant, inspiring, and graceful.
Karen Chamas, London.
And the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II will be the biggest security operation London has ever seen. Not only will central London be packed with hundreds of thousands of people, but the guest list for the funeral includes hundreds of emperors, kings, queens, presidents, and prime ministers from around the world. More than 10,000 police officers will be on duty that day, with reinforcements coming from all of Britain's 43 police forces. This is VOA News. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed there would be no let-up in fighting to regain territory lost to Russia after the top U.S. general warned it was unclear how Moscow would react to its battlefield setbacks in Ukraine. Britain said Russian forces had widened strikes on civilian infrastructure following battlefield setbacks and were likely to expand their targets further. The Ukrainian military said Sunday that its forces repelled attacks by Russian troops in the area of the Kharkiv region in the east and the Kherson region in south, where Ukraine launched counteroffensives this month, as well as in parts of Donetsk in the southeast. In territory reclaimed from Russian forces last week, Ukrainian officials are finding makeshift prisons, alleging they served as torture chambers. AP correspondent Ben Thomas has more.
The dank basement behind the local supermarket in Kozacha Lopan. This National Guard commander, asked to be identified just as Vitali for security reasons, tells an AP team prisoners of war were held here and interrogated. President Vladimir Zelensky says more than 10 torture chambers have been found in liberated areas in the Kharkiv region, and he says the Russians left behind the devices they used, including electrical wires. Burial sites are being excavated, most notably in the city of Izium, where Ukrainian officials say more than 440 graves have been found, some bodies showing signs of violent deaths. Zelensky vows to identify all who carried it out. I'm Ben Thomas.
Most of the island of Puerto Rico was without power Sunday as Hurricane Fiona made landfall, causing severe flooding and landslides before barreling toward the Dominican Republic, a government agency said. The center of the storm made landfall on the southwestern coast of Puerto Rico around 3:20 p.m. Fiona is due just 2 days before the 5-year anniversary of Hurricane Maria, a devastating storm that caused nearly 3,000 deaths. A historic storm sweeps through the western part of the U.S. state of Alaska. AP correspondent Julie Walker.
Becca Luce lives about a half a mile from the coastline and was still able to see the waves crash onto shore, flooding Main Street in Nome. She says homes and cabins were swept away.
With all the preparation in the world, the ocean is so powerful and it caused so much damage.
Governor Mike Dunleavy says 1,000 miles of Alaska's coastline was hit by the storm, the remnants of a Pacific typhoon.
We're trying to assess exactly what has occurred.
Now he says the concern is the remnants of the storm and surging water, plus getting the cleanup done before the freeze starts next month.
We are going to move as quickly as we can to provide relief, to provide recovery.
Around the world. I'm Ashley Thompson.
And I'm Dan No. This is VOA News. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey. Britain and the world said farewell to Queen Elizabeth II with pomp and pageantry. Crowds massed in the streets of London and at Windsor Castle to honor a monarch whose 70-year reign defined an era. It was the first state funeral since Winston Churchill's in 1965 drew world leaders and other royalty. Royal Navy sailors pulled a gun carriage carrying her flag-draped coffin to Westminster Abbey before pallbearers carried it inside. A moving, deeply atmospheric funeral service sets Queen Elizabeth II on her final journey. AP correspondent Charles de Ledesma reports.
Big Ben signals the arrival of a gun carriage carrying the coffin of a monarch who reigned for 70 years, while, during the service, the Archbishop of Canterbury draws deep meaning and hope from the Queen's life.
All who follow the Queen's example and inspiration of trust and faith in God can with her say, "We will meet again."
With extraordinary sensitivity, the Queen's Piper Major, Paul Burns, brings the Westminster Abbey service to a close. Charles de Ledesma, London.
Find more on our website, voanews.com. This is VOA News. A Russian missile has blasted a crater close to a nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine, damaging nearby industrial equipment but not hitting its 3 reactors. Ukrainian authorities denounced Monday's attack as an act of nuclear terrorism. Ukraine's nuclear operator said the missile struck within 300 meters of reactors at South Ukraine nuclear power plant. The strike followed warnings from Russian President Vladimir Putin of possible stepped-up attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure after his forces suffered battlefield setbacks. It also renewed fears of possible radioactive disaster in the near 7-month war. One Western analyst said the Russian military was apparently trying to knock Ukrainian nuclear power plants offline before winter sets in. 5 people were killed in Iran's Kurdish region on Monday when security forces opened fire during protests over the death of a woman in police custody, a Kurdish rights group said, on the 3rd day of a turmoil of an incident that has ignited nationwide anger. A 22-year-old from Iran's Kurdistan province fell into a coma and died following her arrest in Tehran last week by the morality police, sparking demonstrations in numerous areas, including the capital. American poet Amanda Gorham unveiled a new poem, An Ode We Owe, for the UN General Assembly, the AP's Ed Donahue reports.
Gorman delivered a stirring poem at President Biden's inauguration last year. Her poem at the UN asks,
"How can I ask you to do good when we've barely withstood our greatest threats yet?"
Gorman tells the AP she took a deep look at how several societal issues, including hunger and poverty, have impacted Earth's preservation.
Equality doesn't mean being the exact same, but enacting a vast aim, the good of the world to its highest capability.
The 24-year-old Gorman says she felt compelled to express the impact of unity.
Above all, I dare you to do good so that the world might be great.
Gorman says these issues are too large to be stepped away from. I'm Ed Donahue.
Recapping our top story, Britain and the world said farewell to Queen Elizabeth II with pomp and pageantry. Crowds massed in the streets of London and at Windsor Castle to honor a monarch whose 70-year reign defined an era, the first state funeral since Churchill's in 1965. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey.